So the question is, whether GDP is a good measure of a country's income, welfare, wealth, what have you, and whether we need a different measure. It is in the kinds of context that, well, some countries grow GDP by incurring large amounts of debts. In other countries, growth may be leading to large inequality. And does that mean that we ought to be looking at for different measure of incomes, or whatever it is, what we want to call, welfare, what have you. My own personal view on this is that I think GDP as a measure of income growth is going to be there. That is what we are going to continue to use. That is what we should continue to use, because we at least know what it is. It is the additional income, additional value added in any given period of time, typically a year, but it could be a quarter, or it could be half year. Why? Well, if there are other issues, other measures of welfare, of well-being of the society, we ought to use additional measures. So at least from the GDP, we understand what it is. But if we begin to, some scholars have been saying that no, we should be having an index of happiness. I'm not quite sure what it means, and can I add your happiness to my happiness? Ultimately, if I'm trying to figure out the happiness over the entire country, I have to be able to add on. I can certainly add what incomes Joe produces and the income that Mark produces and the income that Peter produces or Linda produces, but I'm not quite sure how do I add up the happiness of these individuals. But we can certainly improve by side measuring other things, which we try to do. For example, now we measure human development through the Human Development Index. We try to look at the vital indicators of health, what is happening to life expectancy, what is happening to infant mortality, child mortality, maternal mortality, nutrition of children, adult nutrition, prevalence of hunger, and we also worry, of course, about the debt, because ultimately when we report that income has grown 5% or 6% as measured by the GDP, we are at the same time also worrying about, well, what is the debt to GDP ratio? And if some particular country is raising its incomes while accumulating large amounts of debt, we are pretty careful to immediately say that, this GDP growth is not sustainable. And the country needs to worry about bringing its debt down. So I believe that, clearly welfare, well-being is not as one-dimensional thing, it is a multidimensional thing, but we ought to specify the different dimensions rather than try to aggregate all these into some kind of measure of happiness, or whatever else we want to call it.